Chapter 4: Tribals, Dikus, and the Vision of a Golden Age. Introduction. In 1895, a man named Birsa was seen roaming the forests and villages of Chota Nagpur in Bihar. People said he had miraculous powers. He could cure all diseases and multiply grain. Birsa himself declared that God had appointed him to save his people from trouble, free them from the slavery of Dikus, that is, outsiders. Soon, thousands began following Birsa, believing that he was Bhagwan, that is God, and had come to solve all their problems. Birsa was born in a family of Mundas, a tribal group that lived in Chota Nagpur. But his followers included other tribals of the region, Santals and Uravs. All of them in different ways were unhappy with the changes they were experiencing and the problems they were facing under British rule. The familiar ways of life seemed to be disappearing. Their livelihoods were under threat, and their religion appeared to be in danger. What problems did Birsa set out to resolve? Who were the outsiders being referred to as Dikus? And how did they enslave the people of the region? What was happening to the tribal people under the British? How did their lives change? These are some of the questions you will read about in this chapter. You have read about tribal societies last year. Most tribes had customs and rituals that were very different from those laid down by Brahmins. These societies also did not have the sharp social divisions that were characteristic of caste societies. All those who belonged to the same tribe thought of themselves as sharing common ties of kinship. However, this did not mean that there were no social and economic differences within tribes.
अगर आप अपने सिलेबस के सारे चैप्टर्स इस फॉर्मेट में देखना चाहते हैं तो हमें डिस्क्रिप्शन में दिए गए नंबर पर कॉल करें.
Some were hunters and gatherers. In many regions, tribal groups lived by hunting animals and gathering forest produce. They saw forests as essential for survival. The Khons were such a community living in the forests of Orissa. They regularly went out on collective hunts and then divided the meat amongst themselves. They ate fruits and roots collected from the forest and cooked with the oil they extracted from the seeds of the sal and mahua. Sal is a type of tree and mahua is a type of flower that is eaten or used to make alcohol. They used many forest shrubs and herbs for medicinal purposes and sold forest produce in the local markets. The local weavers and leather workers turned to the Khons when they needed supplies of kusum and palaush flowers to color their clothes and leather. How did tribal groups live? By the 19th century, tribal people in different parts of India were involved in a variety of activities. Some were jhum cultivators. Some of them practiced jhum cultivation, that is, shifting cultivation. This was done on small patches of land, mostly in forests. The cultivators cut the treetops to allow sunlight to reach the ground and burnt the vegetation on the land to clear it for cultivation. They spread the ash from the firing, which contained potash, to fertilize the soil. They used the axe to cut trees and the hoe to scratch the soil in order to prepare it for cultivation. They broadcast the seeds, that is, scattered the seeds on the field instead of plowing the land and sowing the seeds. Once the crop was ready and harvested, they moved to another field. A field that had been cultivated once and left fallow for several years. Fallow means a land left uncultivated for a while so that the soil recovers fertility. Shifting cultivators were found in the hilly and forested tracts of northeast and central India. The lives of these tribal people depended on free movement within forests and on being able to use the land and forests for growing their crops. That is the only way they could practice shifting cultivation.
अगर आप अपने सिलेबस के सारे चैप्टर्स इस फॉर्मेट में देखना चाहते हैं तो हमें डिस्क्रिप्शन में दिए गए नंबर पर कॉल करें.
Tribal groups often needed to buy and sell in order to be able to get the goods that were not produced within the locality. This led to their dependence on traders and moneylenders. Traders came around with things for sale and sold the goods at high prices. Moneylenders gave loans with which the tribals met their cash needs, adding to what they earned. But the interest charged on the loans was usually very high. So, for the tribals, market and commerce often meant debt and poverty. They therefore came to see the moneylender and trader as evil outsiders and the cause of their misery. From where did these forest people get the supplies of rice and other grains? Well, at times they exchanged goods, getting what they needed in return for their valuable forest produce. At other times, they bought goods with the small amount of earnings they had. Some of them did odd jobs in the villages, carrying loads or building roads, while others labored in the fields of peasants and farmers. When supplies of forest produce shrank, tribal people had to increasingly wander around in search of work as laborers. But many of them, like the beggars of central India, were reluctant to do work for others. The beggars saw themselves as people of the forest, who could only live on the produce of the forest. It was below the dignity of a beggar to become a laborer.
अगर आप अपने सिलेबस के सारे चैप्टर्स इस फॉर्मेट में देखना चाहते हैं तो हमें डिस्क्रिप्शन में दिए गए नंबर पर कॉल करें. ऐसे ही और एजुकेशनल वीडियोस देखने के लिए हमारे चैनल होम रिवाइज को सब्सक्राइब करें.